To have passion in life is everything.
What's your Everest?
Oh,
Is it
yeah.
that 200-inch buck?
They just look so impressive when they're wide.
Especially running away.
Welcome to this week's episode of Eastmans Elevated.
It's like a think tank for outdoor activity.
Sounds exactly like my hunting. Just always thinking about it, always trying to evolve it and make it better.
Here's your host, Barney.
All right, another episode of Elevated DIY coming at you here. So today's episode is going to be all about late season mule deer hunting. So we're kind of coming into the mid season, so I'm going to cover this pre-rut, rut, and then post-rut, and I just think it's a great topic for right now. Is everybody starting to hunt mule deer for the mid-season and late season, and so get you guys some tips and tactics that'll help you out there in the field to connect with that big old Moosehorn muley buck you guys are looking for, and the one I'm looking for too. So always a good refresher course, and it's just been great. You guys have been giving me a ton of ideas. I've got a notebook full of ideas for podcast episodes. So now it's just about picking the right episode that fits the time of year we're in. And like I say, I think right now is a great time to talk about mule deer, as I'm starting to switch gears and my elk season is over, and now I'm looking to hunt some deer in the pre-rut. Like I've mentioned before, with my daughter, we're going to head over this weekend, and then I'll start kind of hunting these mule deer, and then I'll get really serious for the rut. And then I also have a later hunt that takes place in January that'll be post-rut. Hunting these mule deer, like right now, is going to be the toughest season you can hunt a mule deer. I mean, these things just they kind of shed their velvet and kind of get away from their alpine living, easy living, staying out later habits. They just seem to tighten up their programs to where they don't stay out as long in the morning, and they don't come out as early in the evening, and they're just kind of feeding, getting ready for that rut. And the bucks are kind of hanging by themselves this time of year, or hanging in bachelor crews, but they just tighten up their program, and a couple different ways you can go, whether you're hunting the mountains, and if you're hunting the mountains, these bucks, they drop out of the alpine basins, and they still stay in that gnarly country, but they just drop down 1,000 to 2,000 feet off their top alpine basins that they live, and they live in more cover and come out in little openings, little avalanche chutes, and little meadows, and feed across. They're tough to spot this time of year, and tough to hunt, but they're not impossible. And if you're not hunting the mountains and you're hunting coulee country, or you're hunting desert, or any other landscape that these deer get in, and I really like hunting this type of terrain this year, is just you're able to cover more country, whether you're camping out of a vehicle, but you can change locations and search out different places, and then it's a matter, you're really playing getting out of the pressure, whether you're in the mountains or you're hunting desert or coulee country. So this time of year, these bucks tighten up their programs, but they're still coming out and feeding, and they're still showing themselves. It's just that first hour and last hour are just so important this time of year, and then the rest of your day, can be spent glassing off different vantage points. But really, that's the time to catch these things moving. And these bucks, they just like to find little isolated spots where they're not getting pressured and they're not getting bothered, where they can just feed around and get ready for the rut. They're not traveling a ton of country this time of year. They'll start as we get closer to pre-rut or closer to the rut. Usually about November 1st, these bucks will start traveling and start looking for does and start covering country. But right now, they're just in little spots where they don't get bothered. And so, like, if I'm hunting the mountains, I try to look for a really good vantage point, and then I'm gonna be sitting on that vantage point come first light. And mule deer differs a little bit from elk as far as sitting on the vantage point. Once I find the master vantage point that's gonna lay out that lower detail country, that's a couple thousand feet lower, those avalanche chutes and little openings and things, I'm gonna sit on that master vantage, and I'm gonna sit there all morning long. I'm gonna look to just catch one of those gray ghosts just crossing in one of those openings, and what I'm trying to do is just locate them first. I want to sit on the master vantage and and look around, and I just want to find one of these bucks that's good enough or meets my expectations for what I want to harvest, and be able to then hunt that buck. And so in the mountains, I'll just work really hard in the dark or the night before and get into that good vantage point, and then just glassing in the morning. I mean, I may move vantage points after I look for an hour or so, but you really want to sit behind your glass. Those gray ghosts are just tough to spot this time of year, and then if I'm hunting the coulee country, which I do a lot of times, I'm gonna head over with my daughter out east, out here, eastern Montana. It's just a great place, great high numbers of deer, high populations, and some nice bucks out there. And so, our method of hunting them out there is we pretty much live out of the truck. And so the mountains are great. I say like there's good and bad points. The mountains, you have a chance to find bigger deer. It always seems like to me, just because it's the vastness of the country and the toughness of it. And so you've got this chance to find that giant, huge horn buck you want to see, but you really have to commit to the spot. And so if you're going into a spot or hiking in with your backpack, living out of your backpack, that's pretty much the spot you're going to hunt for the next couple 2-3 days or the whole weekend. You're going to commit to that spot. And so you don't seem to see the numbers, but you have a chance to see those bigger deer. And two, it's just getting in the right spot. It's not that you can't see huge numbers in and through there, but usually this time of year you pick a spot, and you may go a time sitting on the vantage where you don't see a buck, and then when I'm hunting that coulee country, advantages are bigger bucks are tougher to find, but you can relocate, and I like to use like a mobile truck camp. And so what I'll do is I'll live out of my truck with a cooler, and then I'll a lot of times if it's dry, I'll just sleep in the back in the bed of my truck and wrap myself up in canvas, sleeping bag, sleep there, and then all my stuff's in the truck, so in the morning I don't got to come back to a base camp. I can just drive, and if I end up 100 miles from where I started, it's fine. I don't got to come back to a base camp. That, or if it's gonna rain or something like that, I'll set up a pup tent and sleep in a pup tent, and then throw my stuff in the morning. But what it allows you to do, it just allows you to cover more country, use your vehicle as a tool to get you to different locations, to where then you can hunt a hike-in spot in the morning, and then you can go to a totally different spot that afternoon or evening and hike into a different spot, to where the mountains you're pretty well stuck where you picked, which could be good if you're into the bucks, but so in this coulee country, I like to be mobile. I like to hunt from my truck, and then I just pretty much day hunt. And I start a couple hours before daybreak hiking into a spot to get to the vantage points I want. And what I do is before I leave, I do a lot of map study. And what I'm looking for on my map study is I'm looking for spots that don't have roads and doesn't have access, and tracts of land that you got to hike into, and that those are my starting points, especially in this coulee country where there is more hunting pressure. And so I'm just looking for 6 to 10 square miles that doesn't have any roads and doesn't have any access, and then I circle that spot on my map, and that's a spot that I'll hike into. And so I'll start in the morning, sleep in a spot, maybe I'll sleep close to that, get up, throw my stuff in the truck a couple hours before daybreak, park at the spot, and then I start hiking in. And usually I've done my research. I know the vantage point I want to get to, and I try to get to a vantage point that lays out just a bunch of country where I can look over. The more country you can look over, the better off you are. And binos and then your scope, and looking long distances, and just looking to locate that deer, same as in the mountains. You got to locate them before you can kill them. So I like hiking to these vast tracts of land, hiking in there, get in there, and then I hunt those tracts of land, and then I assess how good the hunting was. What did I see in there, and usually I can get a pretty good idea if I hunt a place in the morning and I was at the right spots at the right times. I know that there's just does in here and maybe a couple smaller bucks, or I'll see a couple decent bucks, and then I'll say, gosh, this might be a good place to look tonight. And this time of year, the bucks. They can be solo, but they can also be in bachelor crews. So if you find one, you may find more in there. And so what I try to do, I try to hike into these vast tracks, get to these good vantage points, assess what's in there, and then I make my next play. And I'll have multiple of these spots circled on my map, and they may be 10 miles away from each other, but I know that I'm going to hike in this spot, hunt it, see what lives in there, and then, if I don't see what I'm looking for, then I'm back to the truck, get a little lunch, make myself a sandwich. I drive to the next spot, and I'm hiking in and trying to get to a vantage point for evening. Looking over another vast tract of land. Just I'm looking for these good bucks this time of year, and like I say, this earlier season, you want to focus on these vantage points and looking for these bucks, and then you can work those ridge lines and work farther back for the next couple hours of light, just trying to catch them or catch a bedded buck or catch where these bucks are hanging out. Like I say, as you get more into this pre-rut, you're going to catch more bucks moving to where you can sit on this vantage point, for a few hours or even half a day up and through there and catch bucks moving through, and especially during the rut. I mean, these things are going to really start cruising country in the rut. Bucks seem to travel, they travel ridge lines and things like that. But I notice, like in the coulee country, there's the side hills. There's big drainages in the bottom, and those drainages in the bottom are kind of creek bottoms, and they run flat, but they cover just a ton of country. Where if you were traveling up above and the coulees are in the side hills, it'd take you a lot longer. What I find is these bucks drop down at night, and then they start looking for does and in all these bottoms in here, and they can cruise. I mean, I've seen bucks 5-6 miles in a night, see them in one spot, see them 6 miles away the next morning. They just travel these drainages, and so they come down at night and really travel those things. And so you want to use your vantage points to be able to look over these big drainages where these bucks are chasing this time of year. And the closer we get to the rut, November 1st, the rut kind of kicks off. By November 6th or 7th, of course, these are all Montana dates up north, and everybody's going to be different across the country. And as we get southern United States, the bucks are gonna rut later. But here in Montana, I try to use, November 1st is really the start of the pre-rut when these things start cruising, and then about November 6th or 7th, the rut's on, and it goes, all the way till the end of November 30th. And I like to think of the peak is right around November 15th to November 20th, right in there. So I travel this country, and I really don't change my techniques too much. Once the rut comes on, I'm still hunting these vast tracts of land, and these bigger bucks that grow up. They just know. If it can be somewhere where somebody can glass it from a road or somebody can see him easy, that buck gets shot at 3 or 4 years old and never grows up to be a giant. And so you want to look for these spots and these drainages that are secluded from pressure, that you got to hike into and put some effort, and that's where those bucks can really grow up and become those super mature deer that we're all looking for. And so you want to key in on these back spots, and not to say that you can't do a little scouting too, driving around and looking around. I'll find populations of deer cruising country, and maybe middle of the day I'll say, well, I'll check this out. And you're not going to see a whole lot of deer middle of the day, but if you're in a hot spot, you're going to start picking out deer. And so it's not a bad idea if it's not an area you're familiar with. I love hiking in, and that's the prime way I'm going to hunt this, is I'm going to hike into different locations. But if you're having trouble finding deer, take a morning and cruise roads and glassed off roads and glass for spots, and you're not looking for your giant shooter buck. Like I say, any spot that you can see, buck's been shot out of. But what it will tell you is where populations are living. So if you start to see really good high numbers of does and smaller bucks and things of that nature, that's a good area, and that's an area where now you want to look back at your map and you want to find, so where can I hike in? Where's a spot or a tract of land around all these deer numbers I'm seeing where I can hike in and maybe find, another buck in there, and be able to get on them. And so, it's not a bad thing to take a morning or an evening if you're not familiar with it, or if you're having trouble getting on game, and just use it as a scouting morning and just say, well, I'm going to cruise around in glass, and I'm not expecting to shoot one or see one I can shoot, but I am expecting to find deer numbers. I want to find where these deer are hanging out, so then I can focus my energy, on this spot where they're hanging out. And in today's day and age, you can find good deer, national forests or big tracts of state land and things, but a lot of these good honey holes that I'm finding in these high pressure areas are spots that are a little bit tougher to navigate. And so I'll find tracts of state land that are bordered by private, and I use my GPS with the Onyx maps, or now they have an app for your phone, which is just awesome. I think that app for your phone is better than the GPS. It just shows so much more detail of the topography. I can't see anything on my GPS. I mean, that dang thing, I mean, it's got such a small screen, and by the time I zoom in and get the topography I want, I can't see the big picture. But the phone, I can actually see what I want to see on there. I can see the topography, I can see the public private, I can see my access in, and I can see a big enough picture to see what's going on. So I really like using that phone app. And the only thing with the phone app is you got to have service, or you can catch your maps, which is save your maps on there, which is what I like to do. I like to save the maps that I'm going to be using, and then your GPS still works in there. But man, that is just an awesome program. I mean, um, it's a new tool for us new age hunters that just makes it so much easier to navigate into these tracks. But a lot of times when I'm hunting these high pressure spots is I'm not looking in the national forest where there's roads cutting and cruising around everywhere. I'm looking for 8 sections of state land somewhere, or maybe it's one section of state land that kisses the road that then opens up to 10 or 15 or 20 sections of state land, and maybe there's no road in there and you got to hike in. But those are the money spots for me, especially when I'm hunting coulee country, and when I'm hunting high desert, and when I'm hunting some of this different terrain that I hunt a lot in the late season. And so when you're looking on your map, I mean, look for these little islands of public land that sit amongst private in there, and look for small access points. And these are just awesome points to hike into and look around. And there's a lot of good bucks that are hanging in those spots. And so that's kind of one of my secrets for hunting high pressure country, is I get to the tougher to access spots. And I've got this spot I'm going to this year that I'm going to bow hunt that I found that's just an awesome spot. It's that exact scenario where it's just a small track that touches the road, and then it cruises back in there and just goes canyon over canyon. And it's basically just a couple miles wide, but it travels for about 10 miles, and there's no access point on it. And there's just some big old mature deer in there. And even this spot, I don't know if I can quite day hunt it, just because it is so far to get in there. It may take me 3-4 hours to get in there. And so, I don't know. I may take my pup tent this year and do like an overnight or a weekend trip, just because I know this spot's good and I've been in here before and know there's a bunch of mature bucks in there. That I'll just park my truck and I'll take a lightweight camp for the weekend, and then I'm gonna get way back into this country and back where I've got it all to myself, and then I'm gonna sit in there and hunt that place, and hopefully I kill a nice buck out of there. So I'm really looking forward to this spot I got here in Montana. I spent I don't even know how many days I've spent out in eastern Montana locating spots, and I shot a lot of nice bucks out there, and there is some great next level bucks out there. I sure would like to get one with my bow. But a little bit tougher. I'm hunting a general rifle season out there with my bow, and so I always kind of, if I can find a 160-inch deer, it's game on for me. But I'm gonna look for a heavier one, more mature deer. Look for kind of a bigger one here this season. I am just down to being a weekend warrior. I burnt so much vacation time, and I'm so lucky. I've been hunting all over Alaska, and I did an early mule deer trip, and I did this latest elk hunt. I took time for that, and so I really have nothing to complain about. But God, just a guy wants to go so hard this time of year, and if you have the time, you can kill a big buck. It's all about having the time. But I'm down to, now work responsibilities and making up for lost time, and I've taken about all the time I can take. I've got to get some work done, so I'm gonna be weekend warrioring it out here, and it'll just be bonsai trips where hopefully I can take off some Fridays and make some 3-day weekends. But if not, it'll be Friday after work, driving 5-6 hours in the dark and get over there, and then hunt for the weekend really hard, and then come back Sunday night after the sun goes down, and 5 hours home and get some sleep and back to work, and do it all again the next week. And I've got about 3 or 4 weekends during the rut and this pre-rut where I'm gonna do this, and I'm just gonna go for it and see if I can't kill a nice one. So I love that this style of hunting this year for these rut and bucks. It's so much fun. I love seeing these good bucks. It's a time to kill a good buck. I like the hunting the early season and their alpine environment, and there I like hunting big huge mountains and vast backcountry. And then this time of year, I'll do a couple trips out east, and then I'll probably do a couple trips to the mountains, or at least one trip to the mountains up there, just because, like I say, you've got that chance to find that better next level heavy horn buck. And not that you can't find that in coulee country. It just seems like I find more of them, deep in the wilderness and deep in the national forest. And but your odds of success go down as well. You're way back in there. You don't see as many of them. You don't get as many calculated plays, and they can be tough in this late season, especially when they're rutting. They just don't stop moving. Every once in a while you can bed one down with some does, and he'll bed down, and you get a good chance at him. But most of the time they're just cruising country. So you're trying to cut them off or get in front of them, or they'll disappear with their does, or they'll move too many canyons over and chase them where you lose sight of them and lose track of them. And so it's kind of tough to harvest them, but it is the season to be hunting them. You see the big guys come out of the woodworks, and come out to breed these does. And so I really like looking for these vast tracts of land in this coulee country, and that's how I'm gonna spend my time. I've got a bunch of places circled on a map, places that I know are good, and then places that I have barely scouted, and then new places I'm gonna go to, and break it up mornings and evenings, and get back into these tracts of land, and then it's just about getting stalks, playing the wind and getting stalks, and moving slow and knowing when to slow down, and hopefully get an arrow in one of these things. So and then I'll also do like rifle hunting with my kid this week. I'm really looking forward to this. It's a 2-day youth season where the youth gets to rifle hunt before the general rifle season opens. And so we've got her all dialed in with her gun. We've been practicing our shooting positions, and then we did live fire drills this last week, and she's shooting this 7mm 08. It's got like a kid stock on it. She shoots it really well. And you just kind of forget hunting with kids. They don't have that killer instinct yet, and even though you train with them and work with them, they don't know how to get their rest, acquire their target, squeeze off a shot. All this stuff, it isn't second nature to them. It's all got to be taught to them. And so we do live fire drills, and then all this week we do practice where I say, okay, sitting position, and she gets in her sitting position with her tripod, acquires my archery deer target out there, and then just squeezes on the trigger and dry fires a shot at it. And then I say, okay, lay down position, throw down the pack and get down. And so we practice all these positions so she's familiar with them and knows them. But she's a good shot with this 7mm 08, and so this is going to be fun because this will be kind of an adventure hunt. And we hunted pretty hard last season, and she did get a deer. She shot a white-tailed deer here in our home valley, but we didn't ever travel and sleep under the stars and be halfway across the state or the country or whatever the case. But it'll just be fun to spend some time with her and team up. And then we're not looking for some super giant or anything like that. We're just looking for one that's bigger than last year. So she shot a 2-point last year. This year we're looking for a 3 or a 4-point. And so we're going to go out and implement these tactics, these early season tactics, and get her covering country and into these spots that I know are good, and try to glass up a buck, and then make an approach on it, and hopefully we'll make a good shot on her. I know she will. She's been training hard, and she made a perfect shot on that deer last year, and so she's put in the work. Just a matter of getting over there and doing some hunting. So we're going to leave maybe Wednesday night after work, and I'm going to try to squeak these a couple days where it's a youth only season, 16 and under get to rifle hunt early, and we're gonna get out and see if we can't get her a buck, and then it'll be on to me and hunting this bow season or this rifle season with my bow. But I just love it. And I do pretty good. I bet you I've killed a buck maybe 8 or 9 years out of the past 10 years with my bow during this rifle season. And so, I just get on my orange and I play coolies and keep myself hidden and make good plays, and then eventually it just seems to work out for me. And so I do that, and then I've got a hunt coming up in January down in New Mexico. And last time I hunted New Mexico was, gosh, it's been 2009, 2010, somewhere in there. I hunted it. I had a tag in Rio Rebo County, and Rio Rebo County, it's one of the biggest producers of Boone and Crockett bucks. This one county produces more than other states. It's a great county to hunt mule deer, and it's actually like the best county in the lower 48 for Boone and Crockett mule deer. Well, that's the county I hunted last time. This time I have a unit that borders that county. So I've never hunted, the first time I hunted it, 2009, 2010, I went down there and epic snow, and there was mule deer that were migrating out of Colorado, and it's a little bit different. You go to the furthest southern reaches of the United States, the mule deer act just a little bit different. They have the same tendencies in that, but they tend to come down to these big flats at night and these big drainages and feed away and then go back up into the cover during the day. And I was able to find some pretty good bucks, and I ended up shooting a really nice buck down there. He was really tall, really big back forks, and I killed him like on day 9. I had been hunting and living out of my wall tent. Gosh, it had got 10 below zero there. It was just gnarly wintertime hunting down there, and I'd seen some really good bucks. In fact, the bucks I shot, I think I passed on the first day because I had seen a 200-inch buck along with this buck, and I gave a try for the 200 instead of this buck. And then I found this buck. I must have found him 6-8 miles away, but it's the same exact deer, and found him in day 9. He looked a little better than day 1, and he was a super nice, heavy horned, older, mature deer. I think he scored close to in 175 or somewhere right in there, but really nice backs and 27 wide and what you're looking for, and able to make a good stalk on him just in knee deep snow or thigh deep snow down there. Caught him by himself, and as these deer start to get done, post rut. And that's kind of what I'll be hunting them in January. They tend to go to winter range habits, and winter range habits aren't too much different than other than they're not really hanging with the does as much. You still see some bucks hanging with the does and looking for a secondary breeding cycle, but they tend to go off by themselves, and then they just want to find an isolated drainage or a drainage away from pressure or away from anything, and they just want to feed, and they feed out later in the mornings, and they feed out earlier in the afternoons, and they're hungry. They got all their fat burned off from chasing all these does, and so it's a great time of year to hunt them. The cold keeps them out more, and so you're able to spot more deer out and about and get chances at them and stalks at them. So it's a really fun time of year. So I'm looking forward to this New Mexico hunt. It'll take place January 1st. It'll be brand new to me. It kind of looks like there's a lot of roads in this unit I'm hunting and not much backcountry, which worries me a little bit, but I've just been doing my map study and just trying to find the places to get away from the pressure and good vantage points and big drainages where I think these things will be moving, and try to attack it that way. And I'm sure I'll be able to locate some deer. In this unit that I drew, it was actually my third choice. But I hadn't had a tag in New Mexico in so long, and I'm happy to get it. So it actually borders the unit where I killed this other buck, which the unit, the tag that I did kill that buck out of, the percent or the successful percent rate in that unit hovers around like 6 or 7% for bow hunters. Well, this bordering unit I got the tag in, success rate is like 21%. So bow hunters are more successful in this unit that I'm hunting. So I think there'll be some good numbers down in there. And like I say, just work hard at my map study. And I think that's an important piece to the puzzle is wherever you're going hunting, just study up on it. And it doesn't have to be prior to season. I mean, it can be the day before you leave. You spend 3 or 4 hours and lay out your maps and just really look for the the vast tracts of land that are away from pressure, where you can hike in, and then look for those vantage points. Like I'm saying, look for high points that are going to show you a lot of country, and then just put forth the effort. You get there and sleep and make sure you're up before light, and you get to that vantage point and watch the sun come up on that vantage point and just glass around vast tracts of land out there, and that's how you're going to find those deer, and that's how you're going to find those bigger bucks during this mid to late season, is using those vantage points, using your glass, letting your glass do the walking for you. And if you don't see what you're looking for, don't get discouraged. You just go to your next choice, go to your next spot that's circled, and if you strike out a couple, 2-3 times, well, then maybe it's time for one of those scouting days where you need to find the deer numbers and hunt in. And just like I was saying earlier, I use that a lot, where I find good deer numbers and glass deer, and you don't have to see a bunch of giant bucks or anything, but even if I can just see a bunch of does and maybe a couple smaller bucks, it just gives me the idea that that's where the deer populations are hanging. And then I look for places to hike around there and look for the vast tracts of land around those populations. And that's how I do as good as I do in the late season, is looking for that. And then I'll hunt with my family as well a little bit. I always team up with my dad. We've got a good record of killing bucks. He killed a nice 4-point last year, and we were able to get my cousin a nice 4-point last year. He came out from Washington. He won't be out this year, but I think he'll come out next. But yeah, I'll hunt with my dad with a rifle a little bit, and then I've got another one of my uncles that lives out here, and so he'll be in camp, and so we'll go out and we'll try to get those guys a buck as well. Hunt hard, get them in those vast tracks, and see if we can't find a good deer for them to shoot as well. So I'm looking forward to it. This is just a really fun time of the year to hunt mule deer and focus on mule deer. And then there's just nothing like the rut, watching a big old buck is chasing a doe and rutting a doe and fending off other bucks, and it's just an exciting time of year to chase them. So I'm just super jacked. Get out there with the bow. Um, I went on this elk hunt, and then I was in Alaska, and during those times, and I like to shoot my bow every single day, but I didn't get as many shots in as I needed to. And so yeah, I'm just kind of back at it here, where I'm trying to shoot every evening now, trying to get my arrows in, make sure I'm dialed in, and make sure I'm ready for my opportunity to go chase these deer around. But yeah, if I could find just a really nice heavy older deer, I'd be psyched. So yeah, I mean, we're just days away. Kind of get set here and do a little hunting with the kid, and then my wife's got an antelope tag, so we're gonna get out for her here a little bit. We made a hunt this weekend after some antelope, so try to get her a buck down and kind of spend some family time and kind of regroup here and just get ready for the muley rut. So I think when you're out there, I think a big thing is just to keep your mind right and keep going hard. And like I say, if it doesn't work out on your first spot, or your backup choice, or your next choice, even just keep out there and keep on those vantage points. And especially as we're in this early season, is you've got to find an isolated pocket where these bachelor groups of bucks are hanging out, or where this solo buck is hanging out. And then with a tight program, I mean, you could sit on the perfect vantage point and just not be there at the right time, and you're never going to see him. And so you got to keep your confidence up and just know that you're making the right plays. And I never, I used to get caught up in this second guess myself a lot, where every morning you're faced with a decision of where you're going to hunt. Do I go back to this spot? Do I go to this new spot? Do I go to this vantage point? Do I drive down this spot? And you can get caught up in a second guess where you're not engaged in your hunt, where you start hiking to a vantage point and then you start going, oh, this isn't the spot. I haven't seen anything yet, and I should have gone to this other spot. I need to get out of here. I need to go to this other spot and hunt this spot. And you're just not engaged in your hunt. And that's when you're walking along and you blow up a giant buck out of there, and he takes off, and you think, God, I should have been paying attention. So you really got to engage in whatever decision you make, right or wrong. Keep with it and see what lives in there. Give it all you got, and keep your confidence up, and keep your faith in the spot you're hunting. And so when I choose a spot to hunt, and I go in there, that's the spot I'm going to hunt. I don't have another choice. I'm not coming out. I'm not going to a different spot. I'm going to see what lives there. And even if I don't see anything, at least I know I hunted it effectively, and I can cross it off the map and say there's no big bucks in here, the does aren't in here. Okay, they're not in this spot. Time to go to my next spot. But I think it's important because I think hunting just messes with our psyche so much, and you want to make the right decision. You got a limited amount of days, and when when you're not seeing deer, you're not in the right spot, you're thinking, gosh, I should have gone to this spot or I should have gone to that spot, and you end up not glassing as hard, not walking as far, not giving it all you got. So make sure you're engaged in your hunt when you're getting out there. I mean, get out there, believe in your spot, make that vantage point, look all around, do your hour, 2 hours from that vantage point. If you don't see what you're looking for, have another vantage point picked out where you're going to do a mid-morning look, maybe catch a rut and buck moving through, and just keep moving, keep the faith, just really look what's into that spot, and be engaged in your hunt, because you never know. It only takes one mature buck to make your hunt, and so give it all you have in there. And a lot of times these deer are so tough to glass. I mean, it's amazing. You can sit on the vantage point for a half an hour, 40 minutes, not see anything, and then all of a sudden, here's a group of does and a buck out and off and in the distance. The one that you're looking to shoot. So keep your confidence up, and then as far as stalking these mule deer, like I say, they can be a little tricky. I love to bed them down. I mean, I'm of course moving in with them on them with a bow, and so I like to bed them if I can. But a lot of times they just tuck away in the cover where you can't see them bed. And if that's the choice, you got to try to. Yeah, I'm always trying to relocate them. I'm trying to close the gap and relocate them. And so if I spot them from a mile, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to be able to see him put away from here. Or if you are able to see him put away in bed, then you sit right on the vantage point and you bed him down, and then you know where that thing is in his bed, and you can make a calculated play and a calculated stalk on him, after he chooses his bed. But a lot of times looking at him, you just go, man, I don't think I'm going to be able to see him bed. The cover's too thick, or timber's not right there, or, they're going to go over that ridge, or whatever the case is. Then I want to try to close the gap, and I want to try to get closer and relocate him from another vantage point. So instead of just running over and trying to kill that buck, I go, okay, where can I see that buck again from? Oh, maybe there's another knob, or maybe across the draw, or another ridge line, and I can close in, and I just see him feeding there and go, gosh, I think I can make it there in 15, 20 minutes. And then I'll hustle up and I'll try to get to that next spot. And then from that next spot, hopefully I can see him bed or relocate him and see what he's up to, and then make another play. Now I've cut my distance in half, or I've cut my distance by 2/3. Now do I try to get on him, while he's out and feeding and up in his bed? Do I try to watch him bed down? Is he gonna bed in too thick a cover? Do I try to cut out the herd? And every scenario is different on these mule deer. You just gotta play the wind, work in closer, and look for your opportunity. But I'm always trying to get closer and trying to get in striking distance where I know I can make a move on this buck if he makes a mistake. So always trying to close the gap, find a new vantage point or a closer vantage point, keep an eye on these bucks, and then just trying to figure out my next move on them. So I like hunting them bedded, but at the same time, if you can't bed them down, I'm this time of year, I'm more apt to hunt a buck on his feet than I am to bed him in that early alpine hunting scenario. A lot of times the majority of the time, I bed the buck, know where he is, and then can move around him. But this time of year, like I say, they move over a ridge, or they bed in thick trees where you can't see them, where, sometimes you got to make a play while they're on their feet. And so you just kind of calculate and go, God, how long is he going to feed out there? Is he going to give me a chance to close in, close the distance, get into striking distance, and say, okay, I'm 400 yards and that thing's feeding right there. He's kind of feeding up that ridge. I think I can cut him off on that thing, or I think I can get to him. If not, then you try to locate that thing in his bed. Maybe if he goes where I can't see him bed, I'll try to get on the opposing hill or work around the backside of him and just figure, well, I'm just going to spend the day looking for this buck and see if I can find him. And then, I try not to bump him or get too close, of course, but try to get to spots where the country opens up to me, where I may be able to see him bed. And then if not, then I'm going to play him in the evening, and I'm going to grab a good vantage point in the evening. I'm going to see where this thing feeds out, and then I'm going to try to make a play on him in the evening when he's out. So the approaches are kind of different this time of year. As I play these things a little bit more aggressive, and I'm more apt to hunt a buck on his feet and see if I can kill him on his feet. Like I say, I love to bed them down, but a lot of times these bucks don't stop moving or don't bed where you can see them, and so I'm more apt to stalk a buck on his feet and with his doe. And that's another thing with his does. He's preoccupied rutting these does, and he'll really waste a lot of time out in the open, trying to push these does around and rut these does around. And so you got more time to get to them too. So that's kind of the way I like to play these things when I'm stalking. So not an exact science or an exact every time you do this. It's more just gaining experience and gaining muley knowledge and keeping track of the winds and just kind of knowing what you can get away with. And again, stalking aggressively but not recklessly. You don't want to cross a meadow where they can see you. You don't want to push your wind to the wrong side. And sometimes you think, well, I can cheat the wind like I've played this game before. This is the stupidest mistake that I've made over and over again. Is the wind will be blowing over a ridge and it's blowing from me to the deer, but I think, well, I can come over that ridge and my wind's just going to be drifting off and beyond him, and he's not going to smell me, or it's just kind of diagonal over the ridge, but he's in such a spot to where the perfect place to come over is right over the ridge. Problem is the wind's blowing that way, and I think, well, my wind's just going to drift off and I can shoot him right in his bed there. He won't win me. I don't think that has ever worked out for me. You just can't fool a mule deer's nose, and every time I make that mistake, I just kick myself. And so anymore, I think I've done it enough times where I finally learned my lesson, where it doesn't matter if he's in the perfect place and right over top of that ridge, and that wind just does not carry your scent off, or it never does for me anyways. It just never seems to work out. And so bow hunters mindset a lot of times is just keeping that wind right. You keep that wind right, and you've got one sense of that mule deer fooled. He's not going to wind you, and if he doesn't wind you, I know I can creep around, and mule deer, their sight is pretty good, but they pick up on movement. If you just freeze when they're looking in your direction, you can get away with quite a bit. And this time of year, most of the times it's not the bucks that catch you. It's going to be the does. He'll have a group of 4 or 5 does, and those are going to be the ones that you got to look out for. And so, the best way to spot and stalk these things is to use the terrain. I love using ridge lines where it's like I know I'm going to be hidden all the way till I cross that ridge line, and then I'll be able to see those deer. And ridge line skills are so important for bow hunting. Being able to come over the top of a ridge and not come over too far and bust that animal, seeing him before he sees you. And so I'll come to that ridge line, and then I really just slow down, and I take a step, and I glass with my binos and take another step, and every step I'm exposing more over top of this ridge line, and I know I have to see him first, so I'm not going to barrel over a ridge line and expose myself. And the minute you think he's not there, he's laying right there, and you walk over the top and he sees you. And so it's so important to slow down on your ridge line assault. So you make it to that ridge line, and then, like I say, just take a step, glass, take a step, glass, and just really be slow and precise. It's a big part of bow hunting, is just knowing when to slow down. And if you're 500 yards out, you don't need to be moving slow, unless of course, he's got a visual on you or something like that. But most of the time you're covering country quick to try to get to him before he puts away, or to cut him off, or to beat this ridge line. But you gotta know when to slow down. You gotta know when to slow down to just to creep. And once you start getting close to the edge of that ridge line, you start worrying about your sound, because he's 50 yards over the top. Now all of a sudden it's step, step, step. You really slow down, and then as you get close to the ridge, it's step, glass, glass, step, glass, glass, and just be looking to your left and looking to your right, and you just gotta see that thing first. If he sees you first, or the does see you first, your chances of killing him go way down. So Work on your ridgeline assaults when you're coming over the top. Use the terrain to sneak in on these things. Don't sneak in reckless. Don't sneak in where they can see you. Use the terrain and the landscape to stalk him when he's in a good spot. And if you can't get any closer and you're 100 yards away and it doesn't work out, you can always back out of there and get a chance in the afternoon and the evening. So you want to hunt them aggressively during the rut, but not recklessly. If that doe busts you, she's gonna bust and she's gonna take that buck with her, and they're gonna be gone and out of your life. And sometimes you can catch up to a buck or figure out where they go, but a lot of times they travel so many ridge lines or get over too far where you can't relocate them or find them again. So you want to try to make something happen, but you don't want to force something. Play those winds right. Know when to slow down, and whether it's a ridge line or you're just coming, like there's always going to be a time where you're going to disappear from these deer, and you're going to be coming over the top or coming around the hill or coming to where this deer should be right here. That's the time to slow down. And I can't stress it enough. There's nothing worse than locating a big buck and maybe closing into striking distance, and okay, he's in a good spot, I'm gonna make a play for him, and then you make a play and you come around the ridge and you don't see him as you're coming around the ridge, or you come around too fast, or there's this thing that in your mind that says, God, you just want to hurry up and just see if he's right there, and you get this hurry rush. Take your steps. Is he gone? Is he there? I'm gonna shoot. And you get this adrenaline. It's when you need to calm yourself and just really take your time and step, and be glassing the whole time and locate those deer before they see you. And if you can locate them before they see you, then you got a chance at killing them, and you can make a play, or you can readjust, or do whatever you need to do. But so important when you're spotting stalking these things to know when to slow down and practice that every time out, and make sure that you're not blowing up these deer that you've worked so hard to locate. So it's a big secret of mine, or not even a secret, but a big tip of mine to harvesting all animals, really. Elk, deer, antelope, bear, you name it. It's just knowing when to slow down. You move quick to cover distance and get to them, but once you get to the spot, you got to know when to slow down, and you got to pick out all those does. Like I told you, most of the time it's going to be a doe that picks you up, not the buck, and so you've got to keep tabs on these does and make sure that if you see the doe first and you don't see the buck, just be patient. He's probably closer to the hillside where you can't see him. He'll circle back around the does, or maybe you just creep really slow. And what I like to do is like then duck back down and hide behind the ridge line and kind of crawl up a little closer. And then as I stand up, if she's looking at me, I know I can't stand up any further than the grass line. But if she's not, I can just keep standing up really slowly. And all your movements, just like your steps and just like looking at them over the ridgeline, need to be slow, and they need to be like the hands of a clock. Nothing spooks a game animal or a mule deer more than when you try to rush something, like hurry up and get drawn, or hurry up and stand up. Like everything is like the hands of a clock. If you move slow, it's amazing what you can get away with. Whether and you're drawing slow, you're aiming your bow slow, you're standing slow, everything is slow. Like I say, like the hands of a clock. You just, whenever you're exposing yourself, whenever you're moving in tight range of these mule deer, just slow down all your motions. And amazing, sometimes the deer will have you busted and all be looking in your direction. But if you move slow, like the hands of a clock, getting your bow up and getting your bow drawn, execute your shot. I mean, it's amazing. Sometimes they'll just stand there and wait for you to shoot. So if you always move slow, never rush, never move quick. Another habit bow hunters have is every time they see a deer, see an elk, or see a game animal in the field, is they want to duck down real quick. And it makes sense. I mean, game animals or deer, they recognize humans as this total stand up erect profile of a large tall human, and so when you crouch down, you're almost a little hidden. But the problem is when you see this animal and you crouch down really fast, you make this huge fast movement to crouch down, all of a sudden they pick up on this movement, and then you're busted and you don't have a chance. So even if you're standing straight up, if a deer looks over in your direction, or you just come across and see a deer, that's when you need to be still and be patient. You stand still until that deer looks away from you, or until that deer makes a move. And sometimes I'll have to stand still even just because a doe's watching me for 20-30 minutes, and sometimes she'll forget about me and go back to feeding and think it's nothing, and you're using your camo patterns and you're breaking up your outline. But just be still. Don't have this overwhelming desire to crouch down and get your silhouette down, because it's movement that animals see. And I've always believed that. I hunt with good camo patterns and good open country patterns, but a lot of times I'm just hunting solid colors. I'm hunting grays and browns and tans, and I've just learned over the years that it's not the camo pattern that hides me. I mean, I like open country camo patterns, but it's animals pick up on movement. That's what they see. If you make the right moves, I mean, I'll be hunting deer out here in eastern Montana. I'll be wearing hunter orange while hunting them with my bow, and that doesn't scare me a bit. I wear hunter orange, like I say, the last 9 out of 10 years or 8 out of 10 years, whatever it is that I've killed a buck, I'm wearing hunter orange because it's during rifle season. I just know that they pick up on movement, and they just don't see me if I move slowly, and they don't catch me moving. I can get away with everything. I can get away with moving into position and getting drawn, all with hunter orange on. So to me, the camo, it helps, but it's not the ultimate for me. Like I say, I'm not afraid to wear solid colors or even orange. Animals pick up on movement. So always be moving slow when you're getting in close, and when you're taking your shot, and when you're getting a range, and you'd think you'd want to hurry up and get a shot, and just not the case. You want to move slow so you don't spook those things, and they'll put up with you being there if they do spot you. I mean, in the ultimate scenario, you never move fast, and they never pick you up and never see you there, and you're able to place a perfect arrow in a buck that's just rutting around and gives you a good broadside shot. I mean, that's the perfect scenario for sure. But even if you get busted, if you're just moving slow, like I say, it's amazing what you can get away with. So remember that when you're out in a field, and always try to move like the hands of a clock, and move slow. And it's like, again, it's knowing when to move slow. Sometimes you got to close distance, and sometimes that kills you too. You got to close distance to get close to a buck so you can have a chance at him. But a lot of times moving in, there's a deer you didn't see, or a doe you didn't see, that spooks over into that deer. And so I try to move quick where I can, and then sometimes there'll be 5 ridge lines until I get to that deer. Well, every ridge line I come up and over before I get to that deer, all of a sudden, before I expose myself over that ridge line, I'm slowing down. So anytime I'm seeing new country, or seeing a new spot in country, I'm really slowing down, and I'm looking around, and I'm making sure there's not another deer there that's going to blow up the scenario. And then once I've scanned everything and I know there's nothing in that bottom and to the next ridge, now I'm going to hustle to the next ridge over. And then as soon as I get to the top of that one, I'm going to slow down and look and make sure that I don't spook a deer in front of me. But it's just this game in bow hunting of knowing when to slow down. And if you know when to slow down, and it's not going to be perfect every time, you're gonna spook a deer, you're gonna make, you're gonna go too fast over a ridgeline, but just learn from it, and just try to teach yourself when the right time to slow down on deer is, and you'll start to get in sync with the woods and in sync with hunting mule deer, to where then you just know the right spots to slow down and how fast you need to go in each scenario. And if you're going too fast where they can hear you, they're going to pick up on your sound and know you're there. And so you just kind of learn when the right time is to slow down, and what yardage, when you're 150 yards out, you start moving slower and being quieter. And then at 100 yards out, you've got a totally different pace. And then, your last closing the distance 50 yards, you just like the hands of a clock, as slow as you can move and as quiet as you can move. So try to teach yourself when to slow down. Another, I don't grunt at bucks a whole lot, but every once in a while you'll be at full draw and have a good yardage, and need to stop that buck, and a grunt will do that. And you kind of needs to be second nature, to know how to stop these bucks, just in case you don't know if they're going to be spooked and start to go, and you can give them a grunt, or if you need to stop him because he's walking and chasing a doe. And I like to let things stop naturally, but once things are blowing up and things are spooking or things are going, or maybe I'm full draw and the buck's going to walk away, having that in your arsenal to be able to grunt at a buck and meh, and stop him, and have him stop right there and give you a shot, or when he's spooked, or you might get a second look, but have that in your bag of tricks as well when you're hunting rutting deer, just to be able to stop them and get their attention. But I just love spot and stalking these things this time of year, and usually, once the pre-rut really gets going and the rut gets going, and then winter range, you see a lot of deer, and you get a lot of opportunity, and that's what's fun to me, is that excitement. That's what I wait all year for, is when you're finally stalking and you're getting a chance and you're testing yourself against these deer or these rutting bucks. And so it's part of it that I really enjoy. So I'm psyched. Even though I'm down to being a weekend warrior, I'm going to hunt as hard as I can, and try to pick up a Friday here or there and make for some 3-day weekends. And then this trip in January, I'll be able to bank my time here and get some work done, get a couple of these projects out of my hair, and then in January I'll be able to take a week, or hopefully close to 10 days, we'll see, and go down to New Mexico here and chase these bucks this late winter range. And it can be tough in January because we get a lot of snow, and here in Montana too. And I don't really love the snow anymore. I used to think that you want a bunch of snow to be hunting, and so the snow's got good and bad. The snow, it's easier to glass up mule deer. They stick out more. It brings them out of the high country. It gets them moving more, gets them feeding later, and so snow can be a good deal. But I don't really like the snow because of the noise it creates. I hate the crunch of the snow, and the crunch of the snow can make it really tough to harvest animals. And that was one of the keys to my success last time in New Mexico with knee-deep snow, and then every night it would freeze. Well, you couldn't stalk in the morning. They'd just hear you coming. They'd hear the crunch of the snow. And so what I'd have to do is I'd have to wait till about noon, and about noon to then 4 or 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whenever the sun went down, I can't remember exactly, that snow would soften up, and then it'd be quiet enough where you could stalk. And so that's super important if you're hunting deer in the snow, is pay attention to how crunchy it is. And if it's crunchy in the morning, just don't go for it and don't push it, because they'll just hear you coming with those big ears, and you'll be busted. And so wait till that snow softens up, and isn't quite as noisy, and so only stalk in the afternoon. So there may be some adjustments you have to make in your stalking with the conditions. And so if the snow is crunchy, I'll wait till midday to stalk, and also midday is really good to stalk mule deer too, because that's usually when the directional winds come up. Most of the places I hunt, the winds are strongest in the afternoon to the evening, and that wind is really your best friend. I mean, it's not easy to shoot in the wind all the time, but wind noise with those mule deer, their big ears, that wind whips by their ears and they just can't hear you. And like we were talking about their scent and knowing your wind's always right and taking that sense away, if you've got a good wind, you know that your sound's covered and you don't got to worry about them hearing you in those last few yards, or at least you got a better chance. So now all of a sudden you've got your scent right, and that's one sense, and you've got the hearing beat, that's another sense. All of a sudden there are two senses down, and this chess game is getting easier and easier, because you've got two of those elements where they can catch you or where they can bust you, and you've pretty much knocked those off. And now the only thing you got to worry about is them seeing you. And if that's all you got to worry about on a mule deer, well, you got pretty good odds of killing that thing. So be paying attention, and you may have to adjust your stalking to what the conditions are, and the afternoons are always better with winds, whether there's snow or no snow. The wind just messes with their ears and messes with their hearing to where they don't catch you coming in. So a lot of times, if you find a good buck, that's your highest percentage, is to hunt them in the afternoon or evening. Afternoon, best case if you got him in his bed, but if not, then you play him in the evening where he comes out to feed, and you use those winds to your advantage to take that sense out of it so he doesn't catch you. And there's two schools of thought. I always like a bedded mule deer, and I've already gone over this, but I like a bedded mule deer because he's in that same spot, and I can really take my time to get to that spot and that location where I know he's at. The other end of it is a feeding mule deer is occupied with feeding, and you can keep tabs on this deer, and you can see if his head's up and alert or if he's down and feeding. And if he's down and feeding, you can kind of move and keep tabs on him that way. And so, a deer up and feeding is really a pretty good deer to stalk. You just got to pay attention to where the does are, and then use the terrain to get in close. But anyways, I'm just super jacked. Montana, New Mexico, and I think I'm planning on a hunt. I've harvested a mule deer out of a bunch of western states, and I'm really proud of it that I've been able to harvest them in all these different states. And the one state that I have not harvested a mule deer out of, and I haven't even hunted, is Idaho. And Idaho, it borders my state of Montana, but I've never been able to really locate a spot that's a good backcountry early spot or late season. I think I've been picking up leads and paying attention to Idaho and doing my map research and my studying, and I think I've finally got a spot I want to pull the trigger on next year in Idaho. And Idaho has a great bow season that's going to go November 1st to November 30th, I believe. So it's right in the heart of the rut. So I'm gonna throw all my chips in and see if I can't harvest an Idaho muley. So I think I'll make that hunt next year, not this year. But I'm gonna plan on it and get over there. And it's a bow only season, which is really nice, to where I'm not competing against the rifle hunters, and maybe I can look for a little bigger deer because the pressure will be off a little bit. So I'm super excited to hunt that. But there's a lot of great opportunities for late season mule deer for the bow hunter. There's a lot of great tags in Nevada that are draw tags. There's tags in the late season in Arizona that are over the counter. There's good draw tags in New Mexico for the late season. Idaho, they've got that over the counter. Montana, it's a draw hunt, but fairly easy draw where you can hunt the rut. Utah, I mean, you can hunt that Wasatch Front that just has some giant bucks. I mean, and not only the Wasatch Front, there's a couple different units that are bow only. And the cool one about Utah is they've got a tag there for the Wasatch that I've drawn that I killed one of my best bucks out of. But you can hunt it early season. It opens gosh, is it? I think it's August 15th it opens. And so you can hunt this early season mule deer. If you don't kill your deer, then you come back in November and you hunt them during the rut on the front right there. So that's a really good option too for a tag, because it's a tag that you can hunt early and hunt late. And those are the two best seasons to hunt mule deer. And there's a little bit of pressure around there, but it's that same deal of getting away from the pressure. And there's good deer numbers in there and giant bucks. So the Utah is another good option for guys to hunt. There's tags in North Dakota in the Badlands there guys get good hunting. So there's a lot of opportunity for late season deer hunt, and it's such a great opportunity for us bow hunters to get out and that excitement of the rut. And just like hunting, there's nothing like hunting elk during the rut, and it's the same thing with mule deer. There's nothing like hunting mule deer during the rut. It's just so exciting and so thrilling, and you never know when you're going to see that giant buck and get a chance at him. So anyways, guys, I hope you guys get out for one of these late season hunts, and hope you're able to get a good arrow and a buck, and picked up a few tips today that'll help you out and on stalking those things and locating them, and kind of your game plan, whether you're hunting the mountains or you're hunting coulee country. So that's it for this episode. I'm gonna take off hunting here Wednesday. I'd probably try to get another podcast out. I definitely want to continue to get one a week, even though it's hunting season. I'm gonna work hard to get one out a week, and then eventually I'd like to do two a week, or there may be a week where I can do a couple of them. And so I'm just gonna keep working hard to keep getting you guys good information, and you guys have given me a bunch of really good ideas that I've got all written down. And so now it's about choosing the right ideas for the right time of year to get you guys good information. So get out there and get your big buck stuck, and if you do, tag me in a post so I can see a picture of it. So good hunting out there to you guys. We'll talk to you soon.